So good morning. It makes me very, very happy to welcome you on our 11th Policy Forum of EPA. We are so happy and proud here to be in Madrid and looking forward to a fantastic congress with over 5,200 psychiatrists from all over Europe and the world coming to here. So as a president, I'm really proud. And I think also this forum and this policy initiative is so super important because we try to connect, and that is the role of associations like this, try to connect with policymakers, try to connect together with patients, families, carers, policymakers, and scientists and clinicians to step by step mold the world towards a better mental health and mental health friendly environment. So I think very important, and also the topic of our forum, I think if this works here, carer communities and work environments is for all of us, and I know also for the European Commission, a very topical element at this moment. I will not make this introduction very long because it's time for short speeches, but also a lot of interaction in the debates and in the discussions. Just to highlight who are we, and I welcome you all here in person, but also the persons now in the streaming online, and there are a lot of people following us. The European Psychiatric Association is basically an umbrella association, and we are very proud to have at this moment 23 scientific sections, more than 2,200 individual members, and 45 national psychiatric associations members, representing about 78,000, 80,000 psychiatrists in Europe. If you know that we are about 100,000 psychiatrists in Europe at this moment, I think we can proudly say that we represent about 80% of all European psychiatrists, and I think that is very important. We are very honored that the Polish government, in view of their current presidency of the EU Council, has given their patronage for this forum. So we thank the Polish government, we thank the Polish Association also for bringing and making the liaison, and we are honored and very happy, and I think it's an opportunity to work together and put these things together on the policy agenda. Now, just to warm up a little bit the topic, I think we need to raise the topic here is workforce. And I just use these three little graphs, which in my view are so super important if we look to the future. These are anticipations. On the left of the side, you see what is to be expected of the European demographic evolution. I'm old, but if I would be young now, I would be scared. I mean, the demographic evolution is going in that way that we can anticipate a much larger volume of older people, much less in the middle age, etc. Parallel with this, if you see in the right side, is the morbidity that is to be expected. Increasingly going up dramatically. And in the middle slide, you see what is to be expected, and what is already now happening is the expenses in healthcare. So these are the major challenges that come up to us as we talk about mental health needs, or basically health needs, and the demographic evolutions. And workforce is so important, and we will need workforce. And if you see to this anticipation, now at this moment already between 10% to 14% in European countries of all the workforce is workforce working in healthcare. This is incredibly, it's one of the largest sectors. And if you look to the anticipation by 2030, and I just, for example, take this report here, the changes in all these professions to be expected. The largest change that will be expected and needed is the change in healthcare workforce, increasing other professions might decline a little bit, like office support, but I think 3.7 million new jobs are needed, and most of them will be driven by this aging population, and a lot of them by the mental health care needs to be covered and other medical needs. So this is really, really the challenge we are up to. And are we up to this challenge? Sorry for this very busy slide. Just to highlight this, I think, in my view, very important and recent OECD report, where a new benchmark for mental health systems. I put, let's say, the most important things a little bit together there. If you look there, are we ready to cover? If you look in the left column, there you see what are the expenses for mental health as a percentage on overall health care. This is in most countries limited. You see only a few countries that are marked in green on the benchmark level. And this accounts for very big differences and for psychiatrists, and for psychologists, and for nurses, mental health nurses. So you have not only a lack, but a great diversity between all these countries. And these are the challenges, these are the bases where we need to start up. You don't need to photograph, Martina, it's freely online available, this book, so no worries. So as my final slide, how to deal with these challenges? Well, there are a lot of things, and I think all of these things will come in the discussions and are relevant for all health directions, for neurologists, for all medical disciplines, for all of us. We need to think about accelerated and optimized training pathways. We need to think about prevention, public health, community-based changes of the health system. We need to think about technology, of course, but we need to think about what is it for families, carers, how can we support communities? We need to think about what is the ethics of labor migration in this field. We need to think about improving working conditions and keeping health carers to work. We need to think about rethink psychiatry as a profession at this time is very important. So these are just ideas, and I'm pretty sure in the fascinating discussions that will come, they will be tackled, and I'm really looking forward to our panels. So this is a small introduction, warming up for this morning, and I'm very happy this is our agenda. My opening speech is done, and we go then to nice presentations from different angles with Belén González Calado, with Marisa Casanova-Diaz. We have an interesting video from Sandra Gallina from the WHO, from the European Commission, sorry, and then the first panel. We have a coffee break, and then we have Martina, and after that, a fascinating next panel. So this promised to be a super, super interesting morning. Good morning, everybody, here and online. Thank you very much, and I hand over to our Secretary General, Julian Biesholt. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this fabulous Congress, this record-breaking Congress with well over 5,000 participants. And of course, before the Congress, we have the Forum, which you are part of. I also want to especially welcome the people attending online. I'm not going to do very much talking. I'm going to introduce the speakers, introduce the sessions. With the panel discussions, we will have an opportunity for questions and participation from the audience. And so we will move on swiftly with our first speaker. So the first keynote speech will be delivered by Belén González Calado. She's the Commissioner for Mental Health in the Ministry of Health of Spain, and she's going to talk about the recognition of work-related mental illness from health systems as a public mental health problem. Please.
Okay. Hi, hello. Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here for me today, not only as a public official, but also as someone deeply committed to rethinking how we approach mental health in the workplace. I would like to announce, first of all, that the Spanish National Mental Health Plan has been approved just yesterday in the Council of Health. It includes essential action related with the program I explained today. So congratulations for everybody. At the Ministry of Health, and particularly from the Mental Health Commissioner Office, we have made this a central issue. We are developing joint initiative with the Ministry of Social Security and the Ministry of Labor and the National Institute for Safety and Health at Work to protect the mental health of workers and improve the working condition of people with mental disorders. So it's truly a pleasure to be here and to share this perspective with you. Thank you very much for the organization. Okay. In recent years, there has been growing concern about the potential impact of work on mental health. The World Health Organization is committed to improving mental health at work in several documents published in the last few years. In 2023, WHO and the International Labour Organization published a policy brief on mental health at work. In addition, ILO's recommendation 194 on 2002 suggests that mental disorders be included in the list of occupational diseases, although few countries have implemented this recommendation. The Spanish Ministry of Labor has also shown interest in the relationship between precarious work and mental health. The 8 Sustainable Development Goals also focuses on decent work and economic growth. And at the European level, Spain has been instrumental in promoting the adoption of EU Council conclusion on mental health and precarious work. In October, the Employment, Social Policy, Health and Consumer Affairs Council published conclusions highlighting concerns about the impact of working conditions on workers' mental health. In addition, The Lancet recently published a series of articles reviewing and summarizing the current scientific evidence of the subject and making recommendations aimed primarily at governments and public bodies. There is a global push to adapt legislation and the resources of public institutions to address these concerns, and the Ministry of Health in Spain is working toward this goal. In Spain, the recognition of an occupational disease in general is determined by a royal decree that defines the criteria for establishing a legitimate cause of such a disease. As in many other countries, this criterion is based on a list of occupational diseases that aligns with the recommendations set forth by the International Labour Organization. In 2006, the Occupational Health Department within the Public Health Directorate of the Ministry of Health negotiated the inclusion of an article in this royal decree. Article 5.5 allows the reporting to the public health system of all those diseases not included in the list in a much easier way, and more importantly, with no need for administrative consequences such as sick leave. The declaration of an occupational disease occurs when the patient needs to take sick leave. So in all cases, it triggers an administrative process in coordination with the Ministry of Social Security, which is responsible of this issue. In addition, the Spanish Public Health Surveillance Network was created this year to develop a royal decree on occupational health and epidemiological surveillance, which allows for the epidemiological monitoring of occupational disease, including mental health disorders. From here, we are developing a project to register work-related mental disorders. Although this is an area that needs further development, there are certain points of consensus on which we can already build. Mental disorders are common in the working population, especially among workers in low-skilled occupations. Mental disorders are important determinants of incapacity to work, absenteeism, unemployment, disability, and lower lifetime earnings and income. These disorders impose significant costs on workers, employers, and society as a whole. Efforts are being made to prevent mental disorders in the workplace, but the impact of working conditions on workers' mental health need to be recognized, recorded, and monitored by health systems. Due to the lack of clinical and administrative mechanism and training, there is a significant lack of data on the number of patients treated for mental disorder related to working condition or activities. The failure to identify work as a cause of mental disorder prevents the elimination of harmful causal agents, leading to prolonged clinical conditions that consume considerable health resources without improvement. This situation also exacerbates waiting lists for health and mental health services, as well as prolonged sick leaves. For 2018 to 2024, sick leave due to mental health problems will have increased by 400% in Spain. These challenges are in addition to other, more specific ones that take place in our national context, but are certainly extensible in many cases to other countries with similar conditions. In Spain, recent years have seen a gradual decline in the quality of work, which has had a negative impact on workers' health, particularly mental health. The intensification of work, the acceleration of working rhythm, and the pressure to increase profitability have led to a deterioration in working conditions. Once in the health system, patients suffering from work-related mental disorders are seen by primary care workers in Spain, who are usually overwhelmed and lack the time of training to investigate the possible work-related origin of, for example, anxiety or depression syndromes. Patients approach the health system with a health narrative about their condition, adapted to the medical context. Special efforts are needed to address the social origin of the problem, and a social determinants of health framework is required to make this link. In addition, there is no standardized way of attributing mental disorders to work-related causes. Although C codes in the ICD-10 and ICD-11 help to document circumstances relevant to the treatment of patients, they do not indicate causality and are only applied as circumstances that have to do with the consultation. They are not diagnoses. The recognition of causes of sick leaves or disability in Spain is based on a list of diseases, which recognizes only some illness as possible consequences of work. It does not include mental disorders. As a result, doctors are not motivated to investigate and document the link between psychological distress and work, because it doesn't make a real difference. Furthermore, recognizing and casually linking work as a potential etiological agent of mental disorder is challenging for several reasons. First, due to the epistemic characteristic of psychiatry, the subjective suffering that results from person experience of the world is intangible and impossible to capture objectively, making it difficult to justify. This problem affects all mental pathologies. Moreover, the technology used in psychiatry to arrive at a clinical judgment is psychopathological exploration, which depends on the training, expertise, and theoretical framework of the professionals. It is therefore difficult, at the very least, to infer a single cause from a set of symptoms, which may or may not be included in a diagnosis. However, there is growing evidence that there is a close link between, for example, long working hours and depression. It is necessary to follow this path and recognize work-related mental disorders. We can already see some significant consequences of ignoring this relationship. Firstly, there is an administrative injustice because sickness benefits are higher in the leave is recognized as occupational. If it's not recognized as such, the economic compensation for the worker is lower. There is also an epistemic injustice, which manifests itself in at least two ways: the medicalization of social problems, where a social or work-related problem is given a medical explanation and treatment, and a so-called epistemic iatrogenesis, which can be defined as the injustice that occurs when a patient internalizes the belief that the origin of the problems lies in themselves, rather than in their living or working conditions. These two factors lead to increased difficulty in resolving the health problem, a chronicity of symptoms, and contribute to the saturation of waiting lists, as the root cause of the problem is not properly identified and addressed. To illustrate the scale of the problem, both inside and outside the health system, we present here some established data. 150,000 cases of depression could have been avoided in Spain in the year 2022 alone if there had not been precarious working conditions, according to the Presme report. Between 17% and 35% of depressive disorders in Europe might be prevented by eliminating adverse psychosocial working conditions, according to the Lancet articles. All of these studies show a significant impact of multiple psychosocial risks on mental health, according to the recent Lancet report. Here we have data based on 12.5 million clinical records in Spain. Even if underreporting exists at the PHC level, work-related mental health disorders have doubled in the mentioned years. Another example. In a study that analyzes the causes of referral to mental health services, it was found that more than 25% were related to C-codes, and 18.4% of them were associated with working condition or unemployment. In a recent analysis of first visit to clinical psychology at a mental health center in Madrid, it was concluded that up to 50% could be related to employment or unemployment. This is a wide range of data that shows we need to focus more on this issue in order to better understand this impact on mental health and healthcare support. To this end, we are developing a project to identify, register, and monitor work-related mental disorder within the health system. We have set up a panel of experts to carry it out. The panel is interdisciplinary and includes all these professionals and experts. We are committed to an intersectional framework that prioritizes the consideration of gender perspective and the perspective of people with several mental illness, as they are particularly affected by precarity and the medicalization of social problems. The work of this panel is to compile and analyze existing evidence on the current state of the problem, to advance the recognition, identification, and surveillance of mental disorder as occupational diseases, to develop an epidemiological surveillance system of work-related mental disorders, and to design the final ecosystem of institutional stakeholders and business relationships. And the main product we expect to develop is this: a document that can serve as a theoretical framework for understanding the problem and our approach, which are about to publish. All this information will be centralized, and we will finally be able to develop the last goal of the project: a dynamic public health surveillance system that provides both information and awareness of work-related mental disorders. Epidemiological surveillance makes it possible to identify the aggregation of cases of mental health disorders and to investigate which working condition might be related to the increase in the prevalence. The coordination and exchange of data with the labor inspection system is essential. It could lead to intervention aimed at correlating to the working conditions that are causing public mental health disorders. Improving the viability and quality of data could lead to the recognition and identification of the causal relationship between mental health disorders and working conditions. And finally, eventually, this will support the inclusion of such disorders in the official list of occupational diseases in Spain. Well, thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Congratulations once more.
Thank you very much, Belén González Gallardo. So we'll move swiftly on with our next speaker. Marisa, if you want to. So the next speaker will be Marisa Casanova-Diaz. She is a perinatal psychiatrist working at Maudsley in London, but she's here in her role as the president of the section of psychiatry in the Union of European Medical Specialists, which is, I think most of you know, is the body that's responsible for psychiatric training in Europe. And she'll be speaking about the mental health of doctors. Over to you, Marisa.
Thank you very much for the invite and to talk about UEMS and the mental health of doctors. In this presentation, I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of UEMS and then why the mental health of doctors is a pressing concern. And in a later part of the presentation, I aim to explore the role that UEMS can play in supporting the mental health amongst medical professionals. So, what is UEMS? It stands for the European Union of Medical Specialists, and it's the oldest medical organization in Europe. It represents over 1.6 million medical specialists from over 40 national medical organizations and from over 40 medical specialties, including multidisciplinary joint committees and thematic federations, which is when different specialties come together to focus on a specific topic. It was founded in 1958, just shortly after the Treaty of Rome was signed, which is when what we now know as EU was created, and shortly after the section of psychiatry was established. Our mission is to contribute to harmonization of training, and we believe that through that we can get to better quality of care. And when I say harmonization, you'll notice that I've put in red leveling up, because different countries are at different levels of development and have different levels of standards. Some are here, some are here. By harmonizing, we want to bring them together, but we also want to level them up. How we do that is through setting standards, which we call European Training Requirements, ETR for short, and those standards cover the whole of the educational continuum, from postgraduate training to continuous medical education. We produce evidence-based guidance, and we offer to monitor those standards through, for instance, YACME, which is a UEMS body that accredits educational events across all medical specialties, through our quality assurance visitations of training schemes, and also through the recently launched European Board Exam in Psychiatry, which we've launched together with EPA and with EFPT. So the quality standards are called European Training Requirements. One exists for each medical specialty, and it covers chapters on the trainees, on the trainers, on organization of training, and on the training institutions. The one that you see on the slide, I invite you to have a look at our website, is the one for our specialty of psychiatry, and that was approved just over a year ago. And that's a collaborative and iterative process. We collaborate with trainees, we collaborate with patients, with their families, and with scientific societies to come up with these standards. Now, moving on to why doctors' mental health matters. Well, it matters because we have high rates of burnout, of depression, of suicide in health professionals. And work-related stresses contribute to that. The workload, difficult working conditions, lack of support. COVID has exacerbated these challenges. And that's why the European medical organizations, including UEMS, came together very recently to write what you see on the screen, this joint statement and recommendations, because mental health is related to this health workforce crisis. And it's important because it has consequences. So poor mental health has consequences not only for the individuals, but also broader implications for healthcare systems. And in psychiatry in particular, we also have this issue of stigma, where people are worried to report any mental health problems. And that's also why the WHO has launched its first of its kind survey on mental health of healthcare professionals. And this survey is assessing not only mental health, but also sociodemographic and work-related stressors and protective factors. Its results should be available later this year and will be disseminated. And now, moving on to this part of the presentation where I aim to explore the role that UEMS has to play in supporting mental health in medicine. I'll start with this recently launched project called Keep Caring, where UEMS is a partner. This is an EU-funded initiative to support the mental health of hospital staff, and it will run for the next few years. UEMS is a partner amongst many other partners from a number of European countries. And its activities are related both to personal factors and job workforce-related factors, aiming to identify what are the relevant factors so that we can come up with solutions both to reduce job stress but also to increase work engagement. And its outputs, we're expecting outputs such as the creation of educational tools, recommendations and guidance, and later on, looking at the longer term and wider impacts, we're expecting to improve the well-being of staff and also aspiring staff, such as medical students. We're expecting to decrease the burnout and also to promote a healthcare sector that is more resilient. This is the joint statement I referred to earlier, where all European medical organizations came together, including UEMS. And it's not only a statement, but it has a set of recommendations. I invite you to go to the website and have a look at the full statement. And of course, they do include the importance of mental health. What about our section? The section of psychiatry is playing a leadership role. And how we're doing that? We're doing that to promote mental health literacy amongst doctors. And we do that because we have the opportunity to contribute to the European training requirements of all other medical specialties. So we make sure that those standards, those requirements, include mental health, not only of our patients, so that other doctors are able to identify, address, and refer appropriately mental health problems in their patients, but also recognize the importance of their own mental health. And we're doing that also for all postgraduate curricula. And how we're doing that, what we've done is to create a working group looking specifically at what all medical professionals need to know about mental health of their patients and about themselves. We've created that working group and has been developing this set of requirements to be incorporated in all European training requirements of all medical specialties. We also support events and workshops on clinicians' mental health. The one you see on the slide was around one that we've done around COVID, a webinar. We've also contributed when the war in Ukraine has started. We also contributed to that, and we continue to contribute to other events and also to the role that we have in accreditation of educational events. This is an example from Ukraine, where we were involved in adapting the European training requirements for the Ukrainian context. And we've also participated in a Lancet commission on mental health in Ukraine, which again, I invite you to have a look. And specifically, we contributed to the framework for rebuilding and supporting mental health services, including the mental health of health professionals. And because digitalization has also been named as one of the stressors for the healthcare workforce, we've created and developed a position statement in AI, on AI in healthcare and psychiatry, which I invite you to read, but I just wanted to highlight this point. We recognize AI as a tool, not a substitute for diagnosis or treatment. So in conclusion, UEMS has done a lot and can do a lot more. We're looking at establishing a pan-European mental health framework for doctors, to create safe reporting and support mechanisms, and we can do that through incorporating it in the European training requirements, and to incorporate metrics in training accreditation, and we can do that through addressing that in our quality assurance visitations to training centers, and also continue to promote destigmatization. So this is a call to action to all of you here in the room, for all of you at home, for all the national associations and training bodies. We need to continue to come together to make sure that we have research and funding so that we can address long-term strategies and empower a culture of openness and support in medicine. So in conclusion, UEMS is uniquely positioned to lead this change across Europe. We believe that the mental health of doctors is absolutely essential to the quality of care and to resilient health systems. Let's make this a shared priority. And a thank you to all my colleagues, representatives from the national associations, my officer colleagues, some of you in the room, Andrew Britoban, Christoph Kristans, Slađana Ivazovic, and also those who are not in the room from the central office, Dr. Mark Hermans, who's a child psychiatrist and is our policy officer, and also Isabel Domain, who is our policy office staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marisa Casanova-Diaz. So we're going to continue with the theme of alternating between political perspectives and, let's say, mental health perspectives from clinicians. And you'll see we have a kind of gap, which I'll come back to a bit later. But the next slot is a recorded message from Sandra Gallino, who's the Director General of DG Sante, which is the European Commission Directorate on Health and Food Safety.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am really honored to address this forum today. Our mental health has huge influence over the quality of our life. This is why we need to prioritize good mental health in healthcare systems and in people's daily environments. In 2023, the European Commission took a major step in terms of launching the EU's first comprehensive approach to mental health. It features 20 different initiatives and 1.23 billion euros in funding for the EU support programs. I will not bore you with all the initiatives, but we are working with the World Health Organization also to provide targeted support to member states and to improve mental health systems. One of the main initiatives is the one that tackles psychological risks at work. It features an exchanges or rather training programs for health and other professionals in their workplaces. Through the EU for Health budget, we are supporting directly member states as they collaborate, they cooperate on mental health, whether it is through joint actions or through projects that are led by the stakeholders. We support the member states and we try to share their most promising practices in mental health throughout. The EU strategic framework on health and safety at work, it's also important because it focuses on psychological risks of people when they are at work, and this strategy calls for member states to improve the monitoring and the collection of data. What can be measured can be tackled in the end. As part of this action, the Commission is looking on how to address the hazards in the healthcare sector specifically, by putting safe working procedures in place, by providing some appropriate training. I would also like to mention that the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work is carrying out a very ambitious research project which is called OSH, Overview on the Healthcare Sector. Very important for us. It focuses on the different challenges that are faced by the health sector when it comes to worker safety and to health, including the mental health of workers. It also tries to raise the awareness of the policy making, I would say, process in general. I have not mentioned digitalization. As we speak, our lives are being changed by digitalization. Technology is now part of our lives. Our workplaces, our health systems, everything is digitalized. But when it comes to its impact on mental health and well-being, we are a bit in uncharted waters. This is why one of the priorities of the Commission for this mandate will be to look at the impact of IT and digitalization. We need evidence-based debates on this topic, and we will start by launching an EU-wide inquiry. If we are better informed, we will be better able to address the risks, especially for young people whose lives are often ruled by these devices. Ultimately, I would like to say that our mission is to help bring about a more inclusive, more supportive environment around the workforce and with good mental health. The environments which allow people to thrive and contribute to a harmonious society need to be fostered, need to be supported. These are just some of the ways that we are somehow using to work with member states, with stakeholders and with professionals like you today in this big event. I think that together we can work to have workplaces and healthcare systems that better value people's mental health. I trust and I count on your support because you are the experts, you are the professionals. So I would like to thank you once again for having me here. Very honored, delighted to address you, and I wish you very, very fruitful proceedings today. It's a very important topic, the one you're dealing with. Thank you.
So I want to say thanks very much to Sandra Galina and the DG Sante. She has, of course, sent her apologies that she's unable to be with us in person. We're now going to move to the first panel discussion, so I'd invite the panel members to make their way up onto the stage, please. So the first panel discussion will be on the topic of addressing the challenges facing the mental health workforce and communities. I'll just let them sit down in a dignified way, and then I'll introduce them. So I referred earlier on to a gap. And the gap, of course, is we've heard from mental health professionals, we've heard from politicians, but we've not heard the voice of patients or the voices of families. So we're going to try and take a step to correct that with the panel. So the first panel member is Peter Carey, who's the chairman, the president of Gamian EU, which is the Global Alliance for Mental Illness Advocacy Networks, representing patients and patient perspective across Europe. And then for families, we have André de Kruijner, who's the Vice President of EPA, which is the European Federation of Association of Families with Mental Illness, of people with mental illness. Then on our panel, we have, on the far side, we have John Francis Leader, who is a board member of the European Federation of Psychologists Associations, and he's a clinical psychologist from Dublin. Then next to him, we have Claudia Marinetti, who is the director of Mental Health Europe, which is the largest NGO representing positive perspectives on mental health. I'm sure you'll say more about that yourself. And then we have Paul Bourne, who is the past president of the European Academy of Neurology. So he's a professor of neurology in Belgium. And I'm not going to carry on talking too much other than to just reintroduce our president, Geert Dom, who is the final member of the panel. So what we're going to do with the panel, we're going to start off with some questions and discussion on the stage. And we will invite members of the audience who want to ask questions towards the end, and there will be microphones. I think there's one in each of the stairwells that you'll be able to use to ask your questions. So I'm going to start with a question for Peter Carey, if that's okay. So we'll start with you. And my question really is just asking you about what you see as the challenges for patients. So it's a very open question.
It is really very brief. If I may stand up for a moment. Thank you very much. My name is Peter Carey, but I would not start with my name, and I will answer your question. But before that, if I may start on behalf of patients. We are living in a strange world today. It is strange for patients as well. If you look around in the world, many things are happening. It reflects on us. I prepared with something else 2 weeks ago, but now I collected statements of imaginary patients. Let me give you some examples from the world. How is today living with mental health issue? I'm a person with schizophrenia in a country where my name appears on a research publication I never have even saw. Yet I'm listed as a co-author. Help me. Thanks. I'm a person with bipolar disorder from a place where people tell I am misremembering selling my apartment, but I never signed anything. Still they say I did, and now they are taking me to an institution. I'm a patient who's afraid to go into a mental health center because I've been there before and I found myself seated next to people using hard drugs. I just have a bipolar disorder. I don't feel safe. I'm a guy who sometimes uses party drugs. I'm a party goer. I like to know the risk, but I won't go for help because I don't want to sit among those mentally sick guys. Oops. I'm from a country where mass shootings are linked to people like me, where even my psychiatrists and community fear me, but they can't say it out loud. They swore an oath to help me. I live in a nearby country with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. A few months ago, I was badly beaten up by two men in uniform on a narrow street. They said they were taking me to hospital and told me I could only say I fell. Today, my psychiatrist say he saw in my medical file that I'm aggressive. I'm someone who's been chosen as a shining gold example by my country, a symbol of how well our mental health and system works. I get full support, bright light, a microphone, and a platform. It's a huge honor. But sometimes it feels like my story was picked me to make others visible. We are in a strange world together. Have a very great European Psychiatric Associations Congress.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm now going to move, Andre, if that's okay with you, to perspective from the families of people with mental illness. And again, the same question really, what do you see as the challenges for families of people with mental illness? Just before you answer, I just want to check with the audience, is the sound okay? Because on the stage we have multiple echoes, so we can't really hear properly. So I hope it's okay down there.
Can you change the monitors or something?
I'm not sure if it's possible to change the sound on the stage. Andre, did you hear? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, I can hear myself. Thank you very much. But the echo indeed is, maybe they've changed it a little bit. I have the impression that it has lowered. From a family perspective, the fundament of our action is the belief that it is possible for all patients and service users to achieve control of their lives, to recover their self-esteem, and move towards building a life where they experience a sense of belonging. Participation is an essential component of the recovery approach. It complies with the principles enshrined in the Convention on Human Rights of Dignity, Empowerment, Equality, Non-discrimination, Participation, and Inclusion. Involving family carers in mental health care is an integral part of a human rights-based approach to effective mental health care at all levels. Now, what is the challenges in trying to implement that goal? And I'm trying to give also some ideas of how to tackle it. I think there are 4 essential items in this recovery approach, and the first one is the therapeutic alliance between the individual, the mental health care team, and the family carers. I can expand on that, but to come back to the theme of this Congress, is the mental health of the healthcare workers. If you are an essential part in the recovery of a person, it is important that every part stay healthy, the family carers and the professional carers. Why is that? Quality mental health services are reliant on the professionals who deliver services as a part of a multidisciplinary team. This relationship must be facilitated in a very practical way through working arrangements to ensure flexibility, availability, and continuity of care. It is also important, as a second item, that comprehensive community-based services place an extra burden of care on families. When care is provided in the community, the burden of care shifts to the family. Whilst many patients live in independent living arrangements, many will live in the family home and receive varying degrees of care. This places extra demands on families who now act as the frontline carer. And the third item is that family carers must be taken seriously. Not listening or involving family is going, I'm sorry, I'm taking back. Family involvement is an accelerator of recovery. It also improves the quality of that recovery. But that is so only provided family carers are adequately informed and receive training. They must be listened to by the healthcare professionals. When they call for help, they must be taken seriously. And the fourth, a very important item for families, is the continuity of care. Services must be coordinated and integrated to meet the full range of social, psychological, and physical care of the person with mental health problems. The structure and organization of mental health care services should facilitate and encourage continuity of care. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andre. So I'd now like to move on to John and ask really a similar question, but with the perspective of psychologists. What do you see as the challenges for psychologists?
Lots of challenges, but I think lots of people who care and lots of good work happening. I think probably three things are useful to name. One are the definitions, I suppose, of mental health, which we're increasingly questioning. So that would be one. The other point is then how we resource care around whatever our definition of mental health is, and very importantly, how we care for those who care so that the project is sustainable. So that'll be the second point. And I think the third one then is just the context in which all of that is happening in. So the increase of digitalization we've already spoke about today. So contexts like that I think are really important because they can make a big difference. So on the first point about our definitions of mental health, I think increasingly we've just been recognizing that there are multiple determinants of mental health. That's not a new idea, but I think every year we're probably appreciating a few more and recognizing them. And on one hand, that's a challenge because, by gosh, we already have a lot on our agenda. If you look at the agenda for this conference and the different topic areas, there's a lot going on, and there needs to be. So it can seem intimidating, I suppose, to add on other topics to that agenda, but I think it's essential that we do, because otherwise it's a bit like if you're working on the engine of a vehicle and you look at some parts but not others, you just really never have that holistic perspective. So broadening our sense of what mental health involves, recognizing these multiple determinants, the role of family members, as we've heard, of course, the role of individuals themselves, the role of the community, but then all of the various contexts that all of this happens in, the role of the workplace, educational systems, etc., is absolutely crucial. So falling from that, there are inevitably going to be multiple competencies then for working with that, because if we try and stretch and spread ourselves too thin, we're going to have challenges. And this is always an interesting one for psychology, because of course psychology is broader than healthcare, but I think increasingly we're seeing roles for practitioners that weren't traditionally healthcare focused, but actually they are more relevant. Obviously digitalization, but even in terms of building the built environment and making sure it's a nice place to be in and how we interact, the ergonomics of things. So I think that's an interesting direction. And of course, we want to have prevention very much in mind, as well as treatment as we progress. In terms of then resourcing that expertise, it has to be spread in a lateral way. We have to be thinking in terms of communities rather than just specialists with expertise. And I think we all greatly stand to gain from that, because the last thing that a specialist needs in a medical sense is somebody coming to them with all the world's problems. They have limited capacity and resources. We all are fabulous at certain things and perhaps not so good at other things, and that's called individuality, and that's okay. So when we share the load, I think we're in with a fighting chance of actually doing some good work. So when we recognize those different competencies, that immediately I think is taking the load off, and it's sharing it and it's spreading it somewhat, which is helpful. And of course, we do want to keep an eye on making sure we're practicing what we preach and really taking care of those who are caring. That has to be an agenda point that's constant. So final thing then is, in terms of changing contexts, digitalization is certainly one thing to mention. And there are many reactions to digitalization, many pictures that come to mind when you think about it. But I think one definite win that's possible, I mean, before we even think about the role of artificial intelligence or advanced technologies, is in the technology design space, the term user experience is used. And patient and client experience, I think, is something that is there's a lot of gains to be had there, because I think so much when we hear about the lived experience of people seeking supports, the supports themselves is one question, but actually just trying to navigate through them is such a challenge. So I would be very hopeful that if we put our minds together as we are, that over the coming months and years that we can do a much better job of helping people navigate their experience of drawing on supports, finding those different resources that they need in their communities or in medical settings, whether it's psychology or psychiatry or anywhere else, and actually navigating through them in a way that is a bit more manageable. So there are some of the thoughts, but looking forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you very much. So now, Claudia, I hope to come to you, and I want to pick up on this point that John touched on about lived experience and ask you what brings carers and supporters and people with lived experience together in Mental Health Europe?
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll also give you a Mental Health Europe in a nutshell for those of you who don't know us. We are the largest independent network working at European level that works on the promotion of good mental health, on the protection of mental health, and on the protection of the rights of persons with psychosocial disabilities. And we have also a special focus on tackling stigma and on improving social inclusion. You know, I think it's good that my intervention comes after yours, because it sort of naturally comes together. The topic is addressing challenges faced by the mental health workforce and communities, and how can we do that? We can do that together. I think that for a long time, especially mental health, we have been working in silos. I think that we should not focus on the specific, forgetting what the big picture is. We need to keep in mind what is the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is well-being of everyone. And in order to achieve that, we need to work on the ecosystem. We need to remember there is an ecosystem. And this will allow us also to optimize efforts. John Francis, you were saying that there are the determinants, the socioeconomic, technological, environmental, and whatnot, determinants of mental health. And it can be overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone. You cannot do it alone. and nobody can do it alone. But in order to be efficient, and we cannot afford to have practices and policies that are not effective anymore. In order to do that, we need to do that together. And one of the pillars at Mental Health Europe is the concept of co-creation, which of course contains like helping people with living and lived experience, finding their empowerment path, but it's beyond that, because you can have as many people that feel empowered as you want, but if the other key stakeholders are not at the table and not ready to sit at the table, then we're not going anywhere. So our co-creation approach is trying to move away from a tokenistic approach to involve people with living and lived experience, supporters and families, etc., into, okay, we sit at the table, we are equal, we all have something to learn from each other, because everyone has specific and very important expertise to bring, and that's how we can move forward. That's why also, that's why it's very important to have this co-creation approach in services as well. So when we want, if we look specific at the well-being of the health and mental health workforce, what we need to do first is to change the culture, because the stigma is still so big that people will feel isolated and will feel alone. What is very important is to destigmatize, but not only to destigmatize. And if you change the culture, you destigmatize, but also you can provide peer support. This is so important. There are good practices there. One of them is this team reflection, which we have worked for a few months, for a few years now, actually. And it is about peer support. It is all about the relationship. This can also be done when you think about policy, but if there is time, I'll talk about that later. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I think we should now move to poll, if that's okay, and ask from the perspective of neurologists about the challenges facing neurologists.
Can you hear me? Yes. Well, thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to congratulate EPA and President Dom with this fantastic Congress, and thank you for also implicating the neurological community. For those among you who do not know the European Academy of Neurology, very briefly, we are a very similar organization to EPA, but we represent the neurologists in Europe, 48 countries, 45,000 members, and in the past we have worked together very, very closely, I think, as it should be. That being said, there's many challenges, and listening carefully to what has been said so far, I could, well, not literally, but proverbially echo what has been said. How big is the problem? The neurological patients, the burden for patients is 43% of the global burden of disease, which is massive, and it's underrated, it's underappreciated. Talking about the costs, more than 1 trillion euro in Europe, incurred by neurological disorders, so we are facing a major issue. Now coming to a more concrete couple of issues. Workforce, it has been mentioned already, where we are partners in the same, or we were in the same boat. In the European space, there is 1 neurologist per 100,000 patients. The ideal situation is 1 per 15,000. 2/3 of the European countries do not get to that, are not at that level. So there is a dramatic shortage, not only of psychiatrists, but also of neurologists. That being said, how is the mental health of neurologists? Well, we've looked into that very closely in the last term, under my term, as a matter of fact, within EAN, working very closely together with our young neurologist and fellows session. They have produced lots of studies on the burnout risk, and for some reason or another, reason that we really do not understand very well, the level of, or the prevalence of burnout among neurological residents is among the highest. The only one that is higher is among emergency doctors. Many people would typically not associate neurology with urgent care. As a matter of fact, the paradigm has completely shifted, and maybe there is a relationship, because before neurologists were sitting in their office thinking about how they could figure out a smart diagnosis. Now the residents are running around in the hospital taking care of this one saying, time is brain. So they have to really run against the clock to save brain of patients. Another major issue in the context of what is being discussed here is a problem that is faced by neurological along with psychiatric workforce, which is workplace violence. I have not seen it in the presentation so far. We live in a very violent world. You switch on the TV and social media, and the only thing you see is about violence in Europe. We are confronted with 3 wars in the European or larger European space. It is pretty frightening. But what we tend to forget is that our workforces are confronted with daily violence. And I'm talking about violence of patients and relatives of patients towards the professionals in neurological and psychiatric wards. The problem is very big. Depending on how you look at it, in different studies we endeavored into major literature review of the last 10 years. It is minimally 10% up to more than 60% of healthcare professionals, both nurses and physicians, including psychologists and allied health professionals, have been exposed to workplace violence. This is a major issue in Europe, and we are not ready to face it very well, for the very simple reason that the reporting is very erratic, very different situations. The way it is being prevented is also very variable among countries and among institutions. Women are more exposed than men, which is again an issue, I believe, and we have some granular data about that. Men are more exposed to physical violence, while female co-workers are more exposed to verbal violence. And I do not want to sound too negative, but the real problem in terms of workplace violence is that all the strategies that are currently being done and currently being executed are not very effective. So really what we need in terms of that addressing and coping with that particular issue is to set up major studies, set up experimental work to find out better and more, more active, more effective ways of dealing with this, both in terms of preventing workplace violence, also having more means of acting on the spot during the event, and also taking care of our healthcare professionals after the event has occurred. So this is in a nutshell some of the ideas that I wanted to bring into the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very important that I remember to ask our president now, Geert Dorm, to give a perspective in the challenges facing psychiatrists. Geert.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julian. Should I be nice or critical?
It's your turn, so you can decide.
What? Just me, so that will be critical. Okay, no, thank you, Paul. I think violence is a huge thing for a lot of healthcare workers, and it's a very complex thing, and as you said, a lot of things has been tried. I agree on that, except maybe there's not too much investment in it, financial investment in our healthcare system and organizations, etc. So that is another thing. So on the critical or not critical note, I think, what can we do? Basically, I think we know what we can do. All the data are there. We know what we can do to improve the system. We know what we can do. And all of the things that have been said here are very wise things, and we know that it is needed and it's working. The only thing is we need to do it. We need to put it in practice, these words, and we need to invest in it. So I think it's very important that we not only think, how are we going to do this and the different elements, but think more, how are we going really to implement it? That is one thing that I want to say. So studies are important, and again studies, but doing what we know is even much more important. While I was sitting here, I was thinking, my God, Julian, we made a big mistake.
I'm sure we've made many.
Yeah, thank you. A big mistake, for example, like, where are the primary care physicians here? They have so big role in the neurology, in the medical world, in the mental health. There are only 20% of all doctors in Europe are primary care physicians. This is a problem. The mental health workforce is huge, is diverse. As psychiatrists, it can be estimated we are 5% of the mental workforce. I don't know about the neurologist and all, but I think specifically for psychiatry, it is such a multidisciplinary domain. So basically, we need to work together and do things together. And then I can ask the question for myself, are we really all in this mental health work field, are we really so good at working together? Because, Paul, you don't know this as a neurologist, probably things are clear. You have something on your radio and you see to the brain, etc., etc. But maybe you have noticed even now in these little discussions, slight things like Claudia saying we're talking about well-being in the population, like me maybe talking about psychiatry. I think it's high if we want to progress, and I think mental health is doing basically good. We have a good reputation, growing, there's step by step, a little more investment, the number of psychiatrists is growing, etc. So I don't want to be negative, but I think we can get much, much further if we all started pulling more and more on the same string, starting with thinking about, are we agreeing on what mental health and mental health problems are? Starting then jointly to go together, because that's the only way it can go, because it's such a multidisciplinary field that is connected with so much in society. So this is really an invitation on my good, all the studies, good thinking, but we need to, and we need more nurses, we need more mental, because it's against myself, but maybe the number of psychiatrists is not the major issue. Maybe the number of mental health nurses is a major issue. Maybe the number of social workers is the major issue. Maybe the number of primary care physicians is one of the major issues and challenges, etc. So people really, and we need to put them on the table, etc. So that's why I'm so happy, Claudia, you are here. The first time Mental Health Europe is invited and you're welcome here. So we have two patient associations. It's important that patient associations work together, that we all work together, that we try to define the same things and try to fight for the same things. So get in unity and fight together to implement things that we know.
Thank you very much. So I want to maybe pick up on one theme that was touched on by a couple of speakers, which is this issue of violence and aggression, because of course there's another perspective on this, and this is to do with coercion and the experience of patients and by proxy their families. So I'd like to ask Peter if you'd like to comment.
Am I here? Yes, I am here. Okay, then. Thank you for the question. Last weekend I had 16 hours with 31 families who have mental health in their family. Bipolars, people with schizophrenia. We had discussions throughout the weekend. It is outstanding. It is patient-rooted. Patients designed that. During that course, a psychologist, who they are member of the self-help groups as well, just mentioned that a bipolar gentleman was sent to a hospital. In the hospital, he mentioned that I just wanted to have a longer bath because he spent too long time in the bathroom, and the mom knocked in. Finally, he ended up in closed ward. In closed ward, he mentioned that he does not deserve that. After he mentioned it, he was tied down, just reflecting to addressing your question, after received medication. And at the end of our webinar, he died. That's what I see about that. Certainly, your point is right, and we might say that there is violence here and there. I don't think that mental health field is more violent than normal population today. It is evidence-based that not. And towards mental health patients, violence is 4 times bigger than evidence-based than towards normal population. So when we are talking about how violent mental health is, or neurological era is, we must consider what I was talking about, how violent is our society today, and what is our response for that. And Gail, thank you very much. Do we have the tools for that, to avoid that? Because we have some tools, and we must use that together with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Andre, did you want to comment?
Well, why I wanted to say is that as a father of a son who suffers from schizophrenia since 15 years, I have, or maybe a little more, 18, I have seen a tremendous development in mental health care, in the humanization of mental health care. It is now widely accepted that mental health care is a co-construction. I liked the word that Claudia used. And as a family association, and all the members, European members and national members, they agree with that, is that co-constructing, talk with each other, expose yourself and explain what you have in mind and where your expectations are. One should not be afraid of that. It may be new for certain therapists to do co-construction, but on the other hand, my experience teaches me that mental health care workers are adamant they want to deliver, and everything that can help delivering, building relationships, I believe in that. It is not something that is objective. The subjective part of that, the construction of a subjective the alliance works wonders. I can testify. We need to continue on that, and I agree with that. We know what we have to do, but we have to do it. We've started doing many good things. It should be reinforced.
Thank you very much. Did Claudio or John Francis, did either of you want to comment, please?
I think that Peter and Andre, they already covered everything that had to be covered. I think that if we focus services on recovery and on dignity for everyone within the service, that's already a big step. I also wanted to say, so Mental Health Europe, of course, we have people with lived experience at the center, but we're not just a membership organization of people with lived experience. We also have service providers, care professionals, human rights experts. It's really like we have this focus on the psychosocial approach to mental health. So I think it's really a matter of how we see the services. And then when you mentioned that I use the word well-being, but I use the word well-being for a reason, which is that I think that if we want to change, we need investments, but we need investments across the ecosystem, we need policy change across the ecosystem, and the ecosystem goes outside of health. And if if there is time, I will be able to say a few more words about that, but I also am worried that other people might want to talk.
Thank you. So I think looking at the time, we should just give an opportunity to the audience. If there are people in the audience who would like to ask questions of the panel, please would you make your way to the microphones? They're in the middle of the stairs on each side. So I'm just going to ask, because one of the themes here is very much about this idea of working together and how we can achieve change by combining our resources and our perspectives. And from the EPA side, one of the things we've done about this is the presidents of UFAMI and Garmian, respectively, are full voting members of our board. So we feel it's important not just to talk, but to share the power in a way that makes things more real. But I'm just interested from members of the panel, if you have some examples of success stories where working together has helped make changes, because of course in mental health we need positive stories that give hope. So any success stories, Paul?
Well, thank you for asking that question. One of the things that I had in mind being invited here and having or being given the opportunity to talk to a psychiatric audience is just to well, inform you about and try to make you an advocate even of our efforts to promote brain health as a concept. We all know what mental health is. You are the experts. By the way, psychiatric comorbidity is the most frequent comorbidity of neurological disorders. So we are pretty close also in our daily dealings with patients, typically looking at many patients together. I think while it is not so important on a workplace level, I believe on the level of advocacy and awareness, teaming up together, psychiatrists and neurologists, behind the flag of brain health is probably the smartest thing to do in the European environment that we presently know. Alike with neurological disorders, mental disorders are insufficiently funded. We are grossly underfunded. I mean, if you look at the burden of disease, combined neurological disorders and mental disorders, we're talking about like 60% or more. We only get, and I do not know the figures exactly for psychiatry, but neurological diseases get only 10% of the overall funding in the presence of a burden of 43%. So the gap, the funding gap is dramatic. And if you look at it from an even wider perspective, look at what individual governments and healthcare systems spend on brain disorders, well, it is just not enough. And I would agree with Geert that it is not only a matter of shortage of staff. I agree with you. If you would today double the number of psychiatrists in Europe, that would probably not solve all issues. The same is true for neurology. I think we better look at it in a holistic way and look and address and face this gap rather together than separately. That is my case.
Thank you. Geert?
Yes, very short in view of the time. I think it's super important to be realistic. That means in this case on mental health, positive. Just if I look to my own workplace, I worked for 30 years in mental health care. This changes has been enormous, as André indicated. There is an enormous evolution there, both in the approaches, both in, let's say, the human right kind of things, both in trying to work more and more with families, more and more with communities. I see in my everyday life improvement. If I look to the media, I see the last 10 years an increasing interest to mental health problems and the challenges. If I see the success of these policy events and others, the 5,000 psychiatrists coming there, the other, I see improvement. I see us sitting here talking to each other for the first time with you, but with others, etc., I see improvement, and that is real improvement. So I really, really think we should be enthusiasts. I see new upcoming generations, I see training getting better and better, and step by step harmonized, etc. So let's be proud. Let's be proud on what we're doing. Is that enough? No. But we can do much more together. But we should be proud at the steps that are taken at the moment. It's not enough, but I think we are on a good way, and I think there's the potentiality to accelerate this change. Abstraction of Mr. Trump. I think there's the potential, abstraction of the economic situation, be honest. I mean, everybody's touched by follow the money principle, but in essence, the improvement is there, and I think we have a momentum that we can accelerate to a next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we'll go with Claudia first, and then Peter Francis. John Francis.
Sorry, because you mentioned advocacy, and I just wanted to say that actually there is so much that we can do together for advocacy. Mental health in all policies, which is something that we do a lot. It's something that is very important, of course, also for care. There are so many policies. There is the whole digitalization field, there is the environment, there are social protection, housing, poverty reduction, and for information, the European Mental Health Week in May this year, from the 19th to the 25th of May, will be on social rights. And there is, on the pipeline, potentially, psychosocial risk factors in the workplace directive. And this would be very, very important, also to make sure that we include also discrimination and stigma in that, and discrimination especially towards the most vulnerable in the workforce, that are often women and people from minorities. So I just wanted to say this in terms of solutions. This, and if we all together ask for a European strategy on mental health. Thanks.
Thank you. John Francis.
If I could just briefly pick up on Geert's point about the cooperation and the collaboration that's been happening, as you're touching on there as well, Claudia, that I think that's been a huge success over the past few years, because by definition, when people are focused on what they're doing, they have their head down. So that's one major role for, I think, European level associations, is to be able to step back a little bit and say, well, what is the bigger picture and how do we work? If we were building a city, we wouldn't want to just build buildings, but we would run roadways between the buildings to connect them. And we'd also want to help people navigate the space as well. So I think that's one of the most practical things we can do from a resource perspective, is form those interconnections. So thanks here to EPA for all the facilitation, I suppose, around that, and so many colleagues here for working on that. We have an intergroup in mental health on a European level this year, which is a huge achievement as well, that so many people have been working on for many years. So I think increasingly there's a platform for seeing those connections. And certainly I've already seen that on a national level, people pointing to some of these examples on a European level. So hopefully that will be a significant change.
Thank you. So I think we've come to the end of our time, unfortunately. It's been really great having a panel representing such a wide range of people, but with an absolute commitment to improving mental health and mental health care in Europe. So thank you very much, John Francis, Claudia, Peter, André, Paul, and Geert, for your participation. Now, I just want to say two things. The one is a gentle challenge for the audience. You've heard the talk here about working together, so I want to invite each one of you to think about what you can do to take this agenda further, working together to improve things. And just to help you do that, we will have a little coffee break. I think it's about 20 minutes, and if you could aim to start coming back in by 1:45, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much. Geert?
And very shortly, thank you, Julian. Remember, this session is recorded. It will be free, public, online, so use it, send it to all your friends, whatever, so spread this message.
been so supportive of this Congress, and the government has shown their support for mental health by having Mr. Konieczny present to us. So over to you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, participants, I'm only neurologist. I'm unfortunately not a psychiatrist, but our problems are not too far, so I'm happy to be here with you. It's a pleasure to welcome you in today's forum addressing a pivotal issue, mental health in Europe. A topic which we will discussing here is not only for academic importance, but first and foremost affects the lives of millions of people. Adaptation and assumption of the mental health systems should both be based on the understanding of recovery process from various perspectives, including biological, psychological, and social. Treatment of mental illness is not only an issue of solving medical problems, but an increasingly emphasized cultural perception of mental disorders, which affects the decision on taking up treatment and the level of support expected by the patient. Sorry, but I'm too tall here. It's a small problem for me. It's okay. What we present here is a step towards a better future, the future where mental health is no longer perceived as taboo, but as an integral part of public health. Poland has initiated a major transformation in this mental health strategy and treating the patients with mental disorders aimed at transition towards a community-based model, which is nowadays considered the best systemic solution improving the functioning of the mental health care system. It is important to counteract social harmfulness of stigmatization, as well as the self-stigmatization phenomenon, where the persons struggling with mental crisis internalize the negative options brought to the others, which may severely affect the recovery process. We must change the narrative. Any person deserves understanding and support. Bearing in mind that statistically every fourth person in Poland suffers a mental crisis at different stages of life, this is of particular significance. Therefore, we put a great weight on development and emphasizing that mental health is equally important as physical health. Preparing a roadmap necessary to initiate the measures aimed at increasing access to a comprehensive and well-coordinated care is a key for further development on the mental health care system. We plan to shift from the model of care based on the psychiatric hospitals. It is now time for changes. By changing our systems, we change people's lives. In context of the youth and children's mental health care, the new system model provides for establishing a network of centers based on the 3 reference levels. Each reference level offers help to the patients with different health needs. The key change is to promote help provided in the newly established facilities located close to the place of residence of the child. The patient may benefit from the offer of these facilities without referral. Such help is available to those who need no mental diagnosis or pharmacotherapy. This approach brings mental health closer to people. It is worth remembering that there is effective help available for many mental disorders manifested in childhood, which includes such interventions in the individual and group mental therapy, family therapy, or peer working. The important fact is that the youth and children's mental health care was for the first time included in the National Mental Health Program for 2023 to 2030. In addition, mental health of youth and children became one of the priorities of the Polish presidency in the Council of the European Union in the first half of 2025. It is now time to act. Mental health is our common responsibility. In the view of the Ministry of Health, the priority task addressed to the persons above 18 years of age should be provide equal access to health services, in particular in such priority areas of mental health. Completion of a pilot program in the mental health centers is a necessary stage to introduce modern and community-based model of mental health throughout the country. The final decisions will be made on the basis of an evaluation. Our common goal is to cover all of Poland with a system of well-performing mental health centers. It should be explicitly stated that the Ministry of Health aims at preparing the relevant legislative proposals which will enable proper implementation of the solutions tested under the pilot to the mental health care system as a whole in order to improve access to care provided in the mental health centers. What should be stressed is that the key priority of the Ministry of Health is to maintain the idea of community psychiatry and comprehensive care provided in the mental health centers. We should remember about the rules of mental hygiene understood as a number of activities improving the functioning of the mental health area. Therefore, initiating the measures aimed at care and improvement of health, developing the behaviors and lifestyles benefiting mental health and mastering skills of dealing with crisis situations on those posing a threat to mental health. It needs to emphasize that we are currently working on the assumptions on the National Health Program for 2026 to 2030, which provides for the tasks in the area of, among others, maintaining the telephone helplines, improving competences of healthcare professionals and other specialists involved in preventive actions for mental health support of intersectoral cooperation in the area of mental health. There is also a major need to continue the tasks in the area of suicide behavior prevention, which certainly contributed to a 7.4% drop in the number of suicides between 2023 and 2024, which, according to experts, in the largest decrease in 2013 to 2024. In 2013, this number amounted to 6,165, compared to 4,835 in 2024. In addition to the systematic and preventive measures, the Minister of Health initiates also the measures aimed at ensuring the implementation of investments in the area of psychiatry, both for children and adults. According to the European Funds for Infrastructure, Climate, Environment 2021-2027 program, the psychiatry of youth, children and adults is the area requiring special support. The European Funds of Social Development, FERS, includes the plans for both training professionals development of the healthcare system, staff in the area of mental health of youth and children, planned allocation approximately 55 million Polish zloty, and improvement the quality and effectiveness of the mental health services by means of development and implementation of the specialist mental disorder, diagnosis and treatment programs. Planned allocation approximately 257 million Polish zloty. In March this year, the Medical Fund, Subfund of Strategic Infrastructure, announced a call for proposals for strategic projects in the area of co-financing the tasks involving the construction, reconstruction, modernization, and retrofitting of strategic infrastructure in the healthcare entities carrying out medical activities, such as inpatient and 24 mental health care services and addiction treatment, under the contact with the National Health Fund in order to co-fund the strategic project. The subject of the competition is supporting the healthcare entities carrying out medical activities under the contact with the National Health Fund, such as inpatient and 24 mental health care services and addiction treatment, in the scope of youth and child psychiatry and adult psychiatry. There are approximately 215 healthcare entities eligible for co-financing. The amount of funds to be allocated for co-financing of strategic projects in the competition is 3 billion Polish zloty. These measures will allow to create better reality for mental health in Europe. Thank you for your attention and engagement in this crucial issue. Thank you very much.
So I just want to say a huge thank you to Minister Konieczny for giving us such a positive message and for the support he's shown by coming to the Congress to speak for us. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next speaker, who is standing right here. So our next speaker is Martina Roinic-Kuzman, who's the Treasurer of the European Psychiatric Association and member of the board. And she has, of course, many other accomplishments, which I'm not going to go into. She's going to speak to us about the ambassador program of the EPA.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. So I'm going to speak to you about the EPA Ambassador Program, which is a program which is going on for the last 5 years, and I'm in charge of it. And so I have the privilege for the last 5 years to report on the progress of this project and program. And although then it also sometimes seems to me that I'm repeating the same presentation for the last 5 years, but I'm not. I'm just repeating actually the concept. So basically, I'm going first to tell you something about the background of the project, then to update you about the newest results, and finally to invite you to participate in the newest editions, which is the 6th edition of the program. So basically, this program was started in 2020 under the leadership of Professor Gordwood. It was the year when there was the pandemic in Europe, and it somehow we had the idea to make a kind of survey which is going to be among all clinical psychiatrists across Europe, where we want to gather their responses and then articulate to policymakers in the form of policy paper, but also in the form of the representation at the EPA forums. Since that, we have done a different edition of the service, but basically we always chose the topic based on what was actual in Europe. So the first survey was the ambassador survey done in 2020, and since the topic was on COVID, we wanted to see how different European countries dealt with COVID at that time, and it was then published in the European Psychiatry. The next survey was on clinical decision-making style across Europe, and it is for the first time that we saw actually that when it comes to shared to clinical decision-making, there are differences across Europe. So what is in a lighter means that it is that the clinical decisions are based mostly by psychiatrists. What is in the darker means that the decisions are leaned toward patients. Then the 2022 survey was again a topic chosen because of the actual situation in Europe. It was a war in Ukraine when it started. And we wanted to see how the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorders was done across Europe. And for the first time there, we constructed a clinical vignette on PTSD. We distributed among the members, and I think it was more than 800 responses that we get from the European clinical psychiatrists, and we asked them how they treat patients with this clinical presentation. And for the first time, I'm not going to go through it, but I'm going to tell you that we found that when dividing Europe in 4 different regions, which is the northern region, Central European region, the western region, and the southeastern region, there was differences how they approach even in pharmacological treatment and also in non-pharmacological treatment when it comes to PTSD. For example, in northern countries, EMDR is the most preferred non-pharmacological treatment and mirtazapine, whereas, for example, in Southern Europe, the use of benzodiazepine, the use of trazodone was more preferred choice. Here we then spotted that there is a high diversity in the clinical practice, and one of the explanations was in the non-use of guidelines, because regardless actually of the part of Europe they are coming from, most of the participants said that they did not use the guidelines in about 50% of people. And then it urges us to make a next survey, which is the survey on ambassador, which is now in the preparation. This is a survey on schizophrenia, and we made a vignette, again, clinical cases, clinical vignettes, and we described 7 different situations, clinical situation or clinical phases in schizophrenia, and we asked the participants to describe how they would treat the patient with such clinical presentation. When we get the responses, first, we wanted to see what was the level of consensus among clinical psychiatrists in approaching a certain problem, and then we wanted we analyzed the guidance papers and guidelines which are used in Europe, such as NICE guidelines, EPA guidelines, treatment of cognitive impairment, and so on. And we wanted to see how the clinical choices were in accordance or not in accordance with these guidelines. So these are the results, which are, these are not preliminary, but are not published yet, not submitted. So basically, you can see here that there on the left, there are different cases, different parts of treatment in schizophrenia. And for some parts of treatment, there is, for instance, a high consensus among psychiatrists. For example, in a treatment of metabolic syndrome, the majority of psychiatrists would just switch from olanzapine to aripiprazole, but also the majority would not use metformin, as opposed to guidelines, where the guidelines do recommend metformin as one of the A recommendations. So this is just one example where the clinical consensus goes in one way and guidance goes in another way. Of course, there are many other situations where the guidelines are just partially divergent and also the consensus is not reached. This is the last year's survey. It is focused on bipolar disorder. So this is just preliminary, but we have obtained a sample of 650 participants, and we're going to do the similar analysis as we did for schizophrenia. So this is this one. Here I would like first to thank the participants. So if we are counting all the ambassadors, there were more than 5,000 participants. And here just we want to thank the ones who did the survey in 2024 and who accepted that they are publicly acknowledged. So we thank them and all the others also who completed the survey. This is the final survey, which I'm going to ask you for contribution. This is the survey which was done for 2000. It is open actually now during the forum. This is a topic on dealing with suicidal patient. The survey was constructed by our section of suicidology, suicide prevention, so it is the core group. As in all ambassadors' surveys, we have a core group of experts who are designing the survey, and then we distribute it here. It will take you about 10 to 15 minutes, and the questions are how you deal with suicidal patients in routine practice. So this is the survey, and the idea is, as in all these surveys, to gather the responses and ultimately to really contribute to the harmonization of clinical practice across Europe, so that one disorder is treated equally in, Croatia and in UK, and also that there are standards who are met all across Europe. And secondly, we want to reduce the gap between clinical practice and what is offered in clinical guidelines, because obviously this gap is important, and we really should think about ways how to converge these responses. So thank you very much for the attention, and thank you very much for filling the survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina. I can confirm that because of the record numbers at the Congress, that Martina, as the treasurer, is a very happy person. So we now move on to our second panel discussion. So I'd invite the panel members to make their way up onto the stage, please. The topic for the discussion will be adapting healthcare systems and working environments in order to prioritize mental health. So the three panel members, we have Andrea Firillo, who is the president-elect of the EPA, who will be taking up the presidency at the end of the Congress. And then we have Andras Kulja, who is a member of the European Parliament, but before that he has worked as a medical doctor for time in psychiatry, but also in surgery. But interestingly, he also has a TikTok channel, which I understand has more than 370,000 followers, and my prediction is by the end of today there'll be a few hundred more. And then the third member of the panel is Franck Belleville, who is the ministerial delegate for mental health and psychiatry in the French Ministry of Health, but he is also himself a professor of psychiatry in Paris, so we've got a great panel here. Now, the way we're going to do this is we will start with giving Franck and then Andrea and Andras a chance to talk or make an opening statement if they wish, and then we will have some discussion, and then at the end, we will try and make some time for questions from the audience, if that is possible. So I'm going to invite Franck to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like first to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present where we stand in France in terms of mental health public policies. So this is a very special time in France with an unprecedented political and financial commitment for mental health and psychiatry. Just to give you a quick overview of what happened recently, in 2018, the French government launched a mental health and psychiatry roadmap. At that time, I was appointed as a ministerial delegate. Then in 2021, President Macron called for a national conference on mental health and psychiatry. And that was the time for a quite important investment between 2018 until 2026. This is 3.3 billion euros of additional investment for mental health and psychiatry. Further political commitment occurred recently. Early 2025, our Prime Minister announced the launch of a major national mental health cause. And recognizing that action on the determinants of mental health dependent on intersectoral mobilization, he asked all his ministers to prepare a roadmap for their administration with a program of action on the determinant of mental health. And aligned with this, I'm very pleased to announce that we co-organized with WHO Euro a high-level meeting in Paris, convening Ministry of Health, but not only Ministry of Health, ministries of European ministries of other sectors to participate to this meeting. And the theme of this meeting is mental health policies in all policies. Many countries have have started reforms on their mental health and psychiatric care system. And as we are, they are facing at least three major challenges. The first one is how to import international standards in our national policies. Our roadmap has three pillars, and there is a strong interaction in these reforms in the field of prevention, psychiatric care, and also social inclusion. But the implementation of these reforms calls for paradigm shifts, representation of persons with lived experience, promotion of their rights, recovery-oriented approaches, construction of coordinated pathways with multidisciplinary and collaborative approaches, etc. And also a need for a strong investment. Improving care response is certainly necessary, but not sufficient, and we are committed to taking a proactive approach to the determinant of mental health, fighting for exposure to violence, in particular during childhood, migration, belonging to minority, financial or housing insecurity, but also access to sport, culture, training and work. So acting on the determinant of mental health requires interministerial mobilization as well as local authorities and economic players. That's exactly the point recently raised by our Prime Minister, calling for a mental health roadmap in all sectors. The second challenge is cooperation. Cooperation between sectors is frequently hard to achieve. Housing, social support, training and work, psychiatric care, fighting against violence and addiction. Working together is not that easy and frequent. I strongly believe that cross-sectorial and dedicated body or institution, such as we have in France, the ministerial delegation, is an accelerator for operational actions to implement the objective of these multi-sectorial roadmaps. Other countries have recognized the need of such a dedicated body to coordinate the action, such as Greece, Canada, Belgium, among others. The third challenge is the healthcare workforce that is facing significant challenge with a potential reduction in numbers at an unsustainable rate. It has been previously mentioned, but it's very important. The statistics said that 1 in 5 doctors and 1 in 5 nurses are considering leaving the profession within the next 3 to 5 years. The trend is largely attributed to burnout exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. However, focusing solely on burnout overlook the role of compromised values, ethics, and existential meaning, which are key drivers of distress within the healthcare workforce. This distress is linked to relation breaches and ethical dilemmas reflecting the personal significance individual attached to perceived transgression and betrayals. Inappropriate service, inappropriate resource, or also is an important determinant of moral injury in healthcare professionals, such as lack of alternative to forced care, excessive and inappropriate use of seclusion and/or restraint measures, or more generally, when modes of care that violate human rights are institutionalized. Addressing moral injury requires organizational level intervention to reduce avoidable moral conflict and promote morally centered culture. Effective organizational strategies should prioritize trust, transparency, open communication, evidence-based approaches, and ethical alignment. My key message today for the future of mental health policies is first investment. It has been said before, but these fields, because of the increase of the demand and because it's an important determinant for modernization and leading change, investment is very important. The second key message is intersectorial and interministerial approaches are key for future mental health policies, and this requires intersectorial, interministerial bodies to coordinate the action. And third, attention, quality of care, right-oriented strategies, recovery-oriented programs are key to keep the workforces committed to the mental health system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So I'm now going to invite Andras to make a few comments.
Honorable colleagues, dear guests, it's a privilege to join you today, not only as a member of the European Parliament, but also as a medical doctor. The question we are discussing, how to better integrate mental health into healthcare systems and workplaces, is one I've seen from both sides, as a clinician and now as a policymaker. I began my medical career as a psychiatry resident at Semmelweis University's psychiatry clinic. Even early on, it was clear to me how immense and how growing the burden of mental health issues is. It affects not only patients, but families, healthcare professionals, and entire systems. Later, I became a surgeon, but even in the surgical theater, mental health was always present. Building trust, listening to others, listening to patients' concerns, helping patients to feel safe and guide them to make autonomous decisions, these were as important as any technical skills. The same instinct to build trust led me to start my health communication channel on YouTube and TikTok. My goal was to translate complex medical topics into everyday language. Topics like HPV infections, effects of smoking, surgical procedures, or cancer prevention. The response was overwhelming, but not because I invented something new. It was not new. but it showed the need of our citizens, patients, for a reliable and understandable information. Because the fake misinformation can spread very fast through internet, and it really affects what people think about the healthcare, about psychiatry, or other medical topics. But why is it relevant today? Because health literacy is one of our most powerful tools, not only for prevention, but for building trust in healthcare systems. And mental health must be a core part of it. When people understand what they are going through, stigma decreases. When they feel seen and heard, they seek help earlier. When they trust the system, outcomes improve. And this is also a political issue. In the European Parliament, we made some progress in the last few months. The Public Health Committee, SANT, has become a standing committee with full legislative power, and it increased resources. Mental health is on the agenda, and it is very important because I think mental health really affects everything in our society. And I think we need a comprehensive and multi-layered way in all health policy discussions. And I would like to mention that the Health Commissioner has made youth mental health as a key priority as well, particularly in response to social media, our use, and online harassment. It's urgently needed. During the pandemic, the number of young people experiencing loneliness quadrupled. Today, every third young European feels alone most of the time. And tragically, in this age group, intentional self-harm is the second leading cause of death. This week, we held the first meeting of the new mental health intergroup in the European Parliament. Together with colleagues, we agreed mental health must be a mainstream issue across European policies, not only in healthcare, but also in housing, education, digital strategies, employment, and child protection. Every regulation we pass has an impact on mental health. That's why we must begin to consistently consider the social determinants of mental health, such as income, security, poor housing, precarious work, loneliness, and digital exclusion, and treat these as public health priorities. In the Employment and Social Affairs Committee, we're seeing the mental toll of modern working life. Digitalization has introduced new risks, techno-stress, caused by emotional distress and cognitive overload using IT tools, anxiety and loss of autonomy due to strict AI surveillance systems, and more people work remotely or independently, often exposed to psychosocial risk without protection. These are real growing challenges to mental health well-being for European workers. And at the same time, healthcare workforce shortage are a pressing concern across Europe. Beyond the obvious strain on services, this also has a strong mental health dimension. Burnout, emotional exhaustion, and moral distress are increasingly common among doctors, nurses, and other professionals. If we want a resilient healthcare system, we must support the mental well-being of those who care for others through prevention, workplace support, and sustainable conditions. So what can we do? I believe we need structural solutions, not just campaigns or awareness days. That means building networks of mental health professionals in these three critical systems. Schools, to support children from earliest stages. workplaces, to respond to new forms of stress and anxiety. Primary care, to ensure every citizen can access mental health support where they live. If everyone saw mental health professional at least once a year, we could detect issues earlier, reduce stigma, and improve outcomes dramatically. To make this happen, and not only be a dream, we need not only political will, but long-term commitment and meaningful investment from member states. We must demonstrate that prevention is not only human, it's economically sound and socially stabilizing. In conclusion, we cannot treat mental health as a separate issue. It is a thread that runs through all our lives, our systems, our policies. As doctors and mental health professionals, politicians, we must keep building bridges between science and society, between institutions and individuals. Together, we should make mental health a visible, integrated, and trusted part of European life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andras. And I'd like now to invite Andrea to make a few comments. We will now hear a perspective about psychiatrists and their role.
Thank you, Julian. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It is for me a pleasure to be here to attend this forum and also to be the last speaker of this panel, because I think that as the European Psychiatric Association incoming president, there is the need now to propose and to make concrete actions to try to modify and to change what mental health is now and is being considered. So I think that there is the need to try to change the way we address mental health issues from a practical viewpoint, from a clinical aspect, and also from an advocacy one. As the EPA, we are proposing now a quite ambitious action plan for the next years in order to fulfill all of the tasks that we have heard today, but also in the previous months. And some of them are dealing with the need to change the attitudes of the general population in order to work toward a better environment where mental health is respected and is protected. In this sense, we need collaboration, we need cooperation, we need to foster what are the already existing activities we do have with the association of users, of carers, of the allied professions, such as the psychologists, as we have heard today, Mental Health Europe, but also neurologists, in order to try to understand better what is brain health, the determinants of brain health, of aging, starting from children, arriving to old age population, through the lifespan. And in order to do so, we need to improve our diagnostic approaches, our therapeutic strategies, try to integrate what is the knowledge that we have reached so far, but also for the need to transform mental health care delivery. Until now, in many countries, you might know, for example, that Italy has been the country with the oldest mental health law, 1978, the so-called Basaglia law. But the mental health care has been until now reactive and palliative. So patients had to come to us, to our mental health services, to our wards, to our inpatient unit. And in that sense, mental health professionals had to try to find a treatment that was, in many cases, just palliative. Now, there is the need to change this attitude and this approach. We need to move our care, for example, in work environment, for example, in schools, for example, in jails, in order to try to understand before when the mental health issue is arising. And this means that promotion of mental health among the general population, destroying stigma and barriers toward people who are constantly discriminated. This means to promote mental health and mental health treatment approach in order to give a better image of psychiatry, of mental health, and all those who work with mental health. This was my very couple of slides in order to prioritize mental health. This was in the workplace based on the last year mental health day from the WHO. But I want to show you that the strategies to address mental health in this sense at work is to prevent, protect, and promote, and to support. But as psychiatrists, if the question is what psychiatrists can do for all these, I think the three areas are to try to promote interventions, management, education, but also to try to improve the collaboration with those who suffer from mental health issues in order to try to create a better environment where all will live, particularly in the big cities. And these are the three individual interventions, the social intervention and the multi-level intervention in order to address stress and reduce symptoms of mental health care, but also improving and reducing stigma and burnout and improving knowledge and understanding about mental health. This is something that we at EPA are struggling with, and the EPA Forum this year was in that direction. So thank you very much to all of you for being here today with us.
Thank you, Andrea. So I now want to turn to Franck Bellivier and ask you really about your experience being a psychiatrist, but also being part of the government initiatives in improving mental health care.
Well, these are very different jobs, you know. Well, it's an interesting experience. First, for you spend some years being a psychiatrist, complaining about the system, and then you move on the other side to the fabric of public policies. The first lesson is really the idea that the patient's needs and the path to recovery really needs the intervention of other sectors than the health sectors, the mental health sectors. And the implementation of this intersectorial approach is really at the local level, and how the local actors will handle this collaborative approach is really key. And so my work at the ministry is not only to coordinate action of the central administration dedicated to prevention, to the care system, to the psychiatric system, or to the social inclusion. So there is some energy there to coordinate the action, but our role is also to support and coordinate the local actors. From my experience of psychiatrist, I think that these very concrete objectives make me understand that the key issues are really cooperation with others.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Andras Kulian now, Just to comment on your experience and maybe insights on the use of social media, both in promoting good health and mental health, but also in the context of widespread disinformation.
Social media is really transforming our life, and we see the effects every day. During the pandemic, I think we all seen the effects, the misinformation, and what worries me most is that there are new and new misinformations about mental health, and this new. It's really hard to describe it in a polite way, but this new trend that reflects to mental health problems with some aggression and to make and show it as a weakness is more and more often on social media, and these very fancy words that you don't need help, you have to care about yourself and you can solve everything, but we all know here that this is not really true, because it's really hard to solve problems when it is a change in our level of neurotransmitters and everything, because it's not just a bad feeling, and I think it is very, very important to use these new tools and to use these new tools to fight against this misinformation, because we cannot ban or prohibit to use social media, especially not for kids, because they will do it even more if we say that it is not good. We can explain them. I think it's very important, the communication between parents and children and in school, that the teachers raise awareness about this, but also we have to be present in the social media, because that's how we create a chance for these children and adults to get the proper information. The important thing that we should not lecture them, but help to understand this, to find how can we translate these very, very complex topics to everyday language. And I'm happy because I see this more and more often, that young medical doctors, psychologists start an educational channel. I was one of the founders of Health and Science and Health Education course at Semmelweis University, and I'm very proud that one of our students has now more than 100,000 followers in Hungary. She is a young doctor, and she also touched the topic of mental health. So I think education, patient listening to children and also adults in a difficult situation, and help to employers to realize when there is a problem, there is a employee have some mental struggles, problems, difficulties, to be patient and help, and not educate, not lecture them, and we should do this even through social media. So I think this is the only way, because as I mentioned, we cannot ban these platforms, and also kids won't be happy if we try to ban everything they enjoy, but be present and help them and deliver the proper information. This is a chance to fight the misinformation.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm conscious of the time, and I also want to give the audience a chance if there are people who want to ask questions. We've got time maybe for one or two questions from the audience. If you would like to ask anything, there are microphones on the stairs on each side, and please make your way there. While I'm just waiting to see if anyone does want to take up the offer, I'm going to turn to Andrea Firillo and ask if you have any further comments, having heard from both the political doctors, if I can put it like that.
I like political doctors. Well, no, I mean, I'm very grateful to both of you for being here today with us, and I think that we already established some collaboration and cooperation with the European Parliament. We have been already twice at the European Parliament in the last year in order to discuss mental health issues. So I think that this is an important step ahead, that you are here with us in order to try to modify these aspects. I like very much the approach that we shouldn't prohibit or deny the use of something, but we should learn how to use these, for example, these technologies. So it's a proactive approach, and it is important that we are present. We are present on the social, we are present in the decision making, we are present at political level, so that we can try to modify these aspects. I'm also in Italy work with the Ministry of Health for mental health issues. We have established an active working group in order to promote mental health in Italy, in our country, and also to collaborate better with the European Parliament. In our program, and I'm going to finish, there are some aspects. One issue that I think has not been discussed today, but it is extremely important, that has been defined a public health scandal, is that of the premature mortality of people with mental disorders. Usually, they tend to live 15 to 20 years less than the general population. So I think that this is another issue, that of physical comorbidities, and the importance also, because I mean, here we have other physicians, the importance of struggle for this and to improve the collaboration between psychiatrists and other health professionals.
Thank you. So I can't see anyone at the microphones, and I think we've also run out of time. So I want to say a huge thank you to Franck Bellivier, Andrés Kulja, and Andrea Firillo for being on the panel and for your insights. It is such a pleasure to have you all with us today. Thank you. So we are now coming towards the end of the forum, but it is really important. We have the two most important, in many ways, guests of the day now to make a closing speech. We have Marina Marsha and Manuel Martin Carrasco, who are the president of the Spanish Association of Psychiatrists and the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Spanish Foundation for Psychiatry and Mental Health, respectively. They, of course, have many other accomplishments, but I'm not going to go into all of them. But the key one is they've been active in the local organizing committee responsible for this wonderful Congress in Madrid. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Julian. And friends, colleagues, guests, welcome to Madrid. We are very honored to host this Congress here in Madrid. Our beloved capital, it's a city vibrant with many different facets, and you can find enormous traditional culture, and also one of the most impressive places in the world to visit museums, such as the so-called Golden Triangle Arch along the Paseo del Prado, with the Prado Museum, but also the Thyssen collection and the Reina Sofia collection, where you can visit the famous Guernica painting by Picasso. So, although our motive of meeting here is not tourism, but I hope you have time to visit some of the beautiful places of Madrid and also enjoy the rich gastronomy of our city. I would be remiss not to highlight also the scientific heritage in Spain. We still have in our minds Santiago Ramón y Cajal, our Nobel laureate of medicine, one of the founders of neuroscience. You can visit also here in Madrid, where he did much of his work, the Cajal Museum, when you can also appreciate this kind of marvelous drawings. You can appreciate this perfectionism of our Nobel Prize. So we are very, very honored to have you here, and I hope that Madrid will provide you with both inspiration and also some very nice time during your stay here.
Good morning. As the President of the Spanish Society of Psychiatry and Mental Health, it's my honor to close the 11th Forum of the European Psychiatric Association in Spain, especially in the present times, when Europe seems to be confused and alone in the middle of turbulent forces from the East and the West. Our country feels happy to be the home for European scientific and humanistic thinking, for European psychiatry. The Spanish Society of Psychiatry and Mental Health gathers the vast majority of psychiatrists in Spain, 2,000 doctors, more than 80% of the psychiatrists throughout the country. We are a society of clinicians devoted to the best care of our patients, based on humanity and science. In the last decades, our society has made a great advances in all areas, including neuroscience, psychotherapy, epidemiology, and social research, that constitute the basis of an integral and personalized psychiatry. The members of Spanish Society of Psychiatry are leaders of different research groups integrated in the CIBERSAM, the Spanish Network of Research in Mental Health. A good number of international research projects are co-participated by Spanish psychiatrists. Many articles in prestigious scientific journals are signed by our members. In prestigious scientific journals are signed by our colleagues. As a consequence, our journal, the Spanish Journal of Psychiatry and Mental Health, has reached the first quartile of the Journal of Citation Index, with an impact index of 5.2. New generation of Spanish psychiatrists are leading in the last years different international research lines or are significantly engaged in the European and world psychiatric organizations and administration. But despite the growth of our knowledge and resources, we currently have to deal with a huge increase of mental health demands of the population. Spain has still a range of psychiatrists per population lower than other major countries of Europe, and we need to convince every day our politicians and our people that a greater investment on mental health resources and professionals has to be a priority of our country. For that reason, the task of communicating the highlights of psychiatry and interacting with global society are so important for our Society of Psychiatry, as well as fighting every day to get more attention and resources from our politicians and our health system rulers. For all of this, organizing the European Psychiatry Congress in Madrid and the 11th Forum of EPA represents a great opportunity for us and a significant support for our mission of translating to society the view of psychiatry as innovative, attractive, efficient, and friendly discipline for the people. As we have seen in this forum, we have to work and share a lot to face the challenge of psychiatry today. I hope you can see a great scientific meeting these days, and also that you can have some time to enjoy Madrid, and if possible, other parts of our country. Thank you very much for being here.
So thank you very much, Professor President Marina Diaz-Marsha and Professor Chair Manuel Martin Carrasco. Now, it remains for me just to say a huge thank you to all the rest of our speakers and panelists this morning. I want to thank the organizers, especially Thibaut and Simone from the EPA office, who are responsible for a lot of the behind-the-scenes work. I want to thank the people from MCI for their work in making the Congress happen, and also especially the technical people who've made sure that the systems work this morning, which makes my job so much easier. So all we need to do now is make our way to have the lunch. The forum lunch is in the cafeteria of the Congress Center, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thank you all so much for attending.